All right, I'd like to welcome you to the regular governing board meeting. We will call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. Please let the roll call show that all board members are in attendance. Mrs. Reed is participating via telephone. And if you'll join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence. Could I have a motion for adoption of agenda?
I would make a motion that the governing board adopt the agenda with the exception of moving action item 6E directly following item 2E, which is the adoption of the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. We'll go to, sorry. All right, we'll move to action item 6E.
I would make a motion that the governing board approve the recommendation for the principal of Stetson Hills for Brittany Dyer Herden.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'd like to go to Mrs. Moffett for the introduction.
President O'Brien, governing board members, Superintendent Finch, and all guests, I'd like to introduce to you Brittany Dyer Herden, who is to my right. Brittany is currently the assistant principal at Diamond Canyon KA area, and she is our recommended candidate for this position, and we're thrilled to have her in this role. We know that she'll do an excellent job.
Wonderful. Do board members have any questions or comments?
I would
Mrs.
kind of
Broadway?
like her family to stand up real quick.
Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us this evening, family. All right, hearing no discussion or comments, then I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Brittany. Would you like to step to the podium and say a word or two?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, for believing in me, and I'm excited to get to know the staff and community at Stetson Hills, and I am proud to be a stallion. So thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Wonderful. We're going to move into our district reports this evening. And we have a DVUSD professional learning community journey presentation, and I will turn it over to Dr. Tunis.
Thank you. President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we are proud to share with you tonight an update on our PLC journey in DVUSD. Presenting with me tonight is PLC manager Amy Moore to my right, and Robert Moore and Megan Calhoun. I'm sorry, Robert Murray, sorry. See, I can't go off script. Robert Murray and Megan Calhoun, who are two of our model PLC teacher leaders. We began our PLC work in 2015. At this time, the majority of our focus was on understanding why professional learning communities were important and impactful. We had a few schools who ran with the idea of PLCs and served as early adopters. In fact, in 2017, you may remember that Constitution was named a model PLC school, leading the way for our district. In the 2018-19 school year, we increased our intensity with PLCs and began working towards dedicated early release time and considering what we would need to put in place to create meaningful collaborative teams focused on student learning. Dr. Galligan led a stakeholder group that consisted of membership from just about every area in which you could imagine in our district. Listed here are just a few of the departments who joined us to consider the goals of our work as well as the actions that we would need to take collectively to be successful in our work. In the same year, our CIA department worked with school level teams to develop agreed upon district essential standards. This was the catalyst for the next steps in our work. Thank you to the board for approving early release days in the spring of 2019. In 2018-19 of the same year, we also created the Model PLC Teacher Leader Model. And tonight you're going to hear from two of our Model PLC teacher leaders, and Mrs. Moore is going to tell you a little bit more about the intention of this program. In the same year, we were able to add the PLC training team. So I have with us tonight, Mrs. Moore is our manager, and over here in the audience, we have our PLC training team, as well as our continuous improvement specialists who have been doing a lot of this work and providing support for our schools. You'll hear throughout the presentation about the support that they provide. For next year, Dr. Galligan has worked with all school level leaders to change the instructional minutes in our K-8 campuses to include time for all 3 tiers of intervention. This time is critical to fully implement multi-tiered systems of support in our schools, and it is really changing the work that we do in responding to student needs. Brittany Dooling also had an idea to add a campus intervention coordinator to our campus, to each of our campuses. So she's working with these campus intervention coordinators and training them on the interventions that we have vetted in our district, as well as training them how to analyze the data so that she can share that data with school leadership teams so that they can better respond to student needs. And then finally, our staff development, our principal staff development team, of which there are probably 6 or 7 in the audience here tonight. They work with us throughout the year to backwards design professional development on PLCs that we present to school leaders, and then we also present the same PD to our model PLC teacher leaders so that we're all learning the same information consistently. But they identified a need for additional PLC time, recognizing that this work was really important. And in the spring, with our 4-day holidays that we love, we were missing a lot of time together. So that information went out a few weeks ago of the additional time that we have added to the calendar. Here's a quote from our president of the governing board, just showing the importance of this PLC work in our district. We've really focused our work on 2 goals. One of them was the implementation of the PLC process district-wide, and the other was developing a collaborative culture through high-performing teams. So that's at the school level. We've been collecting data on this since 2018 in different fashions. So at the district-wide implementation, we're looking for our schools to be developing or above, and that's the 2 highest rankings on the rubric. So you can see from 2018 to 2020, our school leaders rated us from a 13% and then at an 80%. 2 years later, our district leaders, if you go to the right, went from a 29% to a 76%. Now, the highly effective teams, that is about the work that our collaborative teams are doing at the school level. And our school leaders who are really hard on themselves, they started off rating us as a 28%, the work of their teams. It went to a 73%. But this year, I think they really struggled with the fact that it looked a little different. And we did spend a lot of time responding, and we're looking forward to getting back to the work that we were able to do when we were in person full time. Our teachers, however, felt a little bit differently, and you can see that their scores are increasing each year, feeling very confident about the work that they're doing in their teams. And I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Moore.
President O'Brien, Dr. Finch, members of the board. One strategy we've used.
Is your microphone on?
Testing.
Oh, you have to pull it closer. Thank you.
There we go. Better? Yeah. All right, here we go. President O'Brien, Dr. Finch, members of the board. One strategy we have used to build capacity to all of our schools and collaborative teams is through our model PLC teacher leader framework. Each school sends 1 to 2 teachers as a model PLC teacher representative to training sessions facilitated by the Deer Valley PLC team. This year, we had 2 cohort groups, 28 teachers in their first year of the program, and 40 teachers who have been a part of this for 2 or 3 years. As part of the 2-3-year program, teachers worked in partnership with their school leader to design an action research project. I'd like to introduce you to 2 of our fabulous Model PLC teacher leaders, both from Sunrise. They're here tonight to share with you a little bit about their journey and their PLC project. Introducing Rob Murray and Megan Calhoun.
President O'Brien, board members, Dr. Finch, and others. Professional learning communities, PLCs, are used to cultivate leadership, efficacy, and drive student outcomes. PLCs are a form of professional development that provide an opportunity for distributed leadership, knowledge sharing, and continuous improvement. Our PLC teacher model was led by Amy Moore and Shannon Young this year. The purpose of the PLC teacher program this year was to 1. Build school PLC capacity through distributed leadership. 2. Apply skills and content to our own collaborative teams. 3. Focus on data and gap analysis. And 4. Help lead a PLC project in partnership with our school leader. As a professional learning community, our collaborative teams focused on 4 questions. What do we want all students to know and be able to do? How do we know when students have learned? What do we do when students have not learned? And then what do we do when students have already shown mastery? Initially, our meetings focused on developing the characteristics and ways to activate our collaborative teams. And we learned that an activator serves as a catalyst on our campus. A catalyst is a person that precipitates an outcome. An effective activator has the ability to challenge team members and themselves. They truly believe that all students and all teachers can learn at high levels, and they demonstrate resilience in especially challenging times. Participants, like I mentioned, in the Model PLC Teacher Leader Program had the opportunity to complete a project in one of 2 areas. The 2 areas were protocols to effectively analyze data, and second, engaging tasks in a virtual and or in-person setting. My team, Megan Calhoun and myself, chose to focus on student engagement.
In collaboration with our principal, Karen Dial, we identified our school's needs based on administrative classroom walkthroughs and observations. We determined that the focus of our project should be on increasing achievement and engagement during social distancing in the classroom. A team of early adopters were selected for Kagan classroom adaptations for COVID-19 training. Periodic adapted Kagan structure implementation check-ins with grade level PLC leaders were completed by the model teacher team. After examining unwrapped standards, pretest quantitative and qualitative data was gathered related to student achievement and engagement in math. Specific COVID-19 adapted Kagan collaborative structures were chosen for implementation as the team moved through learning progressions. Following implementation, post-test data was collected for comparative purposes.
So students were surveyed on math attitudes before and after implementation strategies. Data was consistent in some areas, but showed an impact, positive impact in others. In the following attitudes: I enjoy learning math, we saw an increase. I can learn from other students, we saw an increase. There is only one way to solve math problems, we saw a decrease. I make mental pictures when I read math problems, we saw an increase. So prior to implementing Kagan strategies, we asked students about their attitudes towards math and found comments such as, I don't get what to do in math all the time. I don't know math, it's kind of hard. I absolutely love math, but sometimes when I get an answer wrong, my brain shuts down. After implementing Kagan strategies, we asked students again about their attitudes towards math and found comments such as, I love math and it's fun, but sometimes I get a question wrong, but I learn from my mistakes. I love when I get math wrong because it helps me learn. I love math, my favorite. I love math, but we need harder problems.
In our project, we chose staff exemplars from the early adopter group from various grade bands for a staff-wide presentation. Part of future lesson planning expectations include the use of collaborative learning structures, regardless of in-place social distancing protocols.
Overall conclusions we found, overall adopters noticed higher levels of engagement in the classroom. What's more, students actually reported that they enjoyed the collaborative activities and learning. Not only did we see an improvement in students' attitudes towards math during social distancing using adapted Kagan strategies, but we also saw an improvement in assessment results. We compared quantitative data from prior year common formative assessments where students were in person all year and found that the students achieved similar or better results. If the second year, this is my second year in the Model PLC teacher program. The program has helped me to improve my teaching and be more intentional about about outcomes. Doug Fisher uses a great example. Most people wouldn't get on an airplane without knowing where it's going. Similarly, students should be provided a clear map and expectations to know where they are headed academically and what mastery looks like.
After completing 3 years in the Model PLC team, I have learned that collaboration amongst teachers is essential to moving students forward. PLC helps students at all levels to increase learning, and it happens when teams stay focused on the 4 guiding questions and make data-driven decisions in their instruction. Having participated and facilitated collaborative teams as they transition from the pre-initiating stage to the sustaining stage of development has proven to me that professional learning communities are invaluable to teachers. We would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Told you they were told you they were fabulous. Thank you to both of you for sharing that. And hear from the voice of Dr. Finch in his entire career, the best professional development for moving students forward, PLCs. And the key are teachers, just like Megan and Robert. In order to be effective in the work of collaborative teams, teachers must have clarity in what students need to know and be able to do. Therefore, in the year of 2019-20, professional development centered around unwrapping standards using the Teacher Clarity Framework. In the summer of 2020, 38 schools chose 25 teachers to participate in unwrapping standards. As we now focus our efforts towards analyzing student data and responding to the results, trending now, 180 teacher leaders are being trained this very week, starting today. And over 500 teachers will collaborate with the PLC training team, in addition to hundreds who will be working with their campus admin throughout both June and July. This is a small snapshot just of today, our professional learning with approximately 60 team facilitators. It was fantastic. And a nice quote from a high school ELA teacher. The momentum was strong, and then came COVID. We thought this was a very fitting visual for this slide. Even with the challenge, 220 teachers from across the district kept our guaranteed and viable curriculum strong with creating their own online resources. At all levels, Deer Valley has collective efficacy, alignment, and moving in the same direction on how we best meet the needs of all of our students, together as a team.
So this spring, we decided it was time to apply to be a model PLC district. So some of the information that we've shared was in the application, as well as the information that follows here. Part of it was highlighting our awards. These are just our high-level awards, as you know from attending all the board meetings. We our kids earn a lot of awards, as do our teachers and our staff. But here are a few that really stand out to us. As far as the data, our data clearly shows trends of continuous improvement through all grade levels in the district. At the national level, we consistently score higher than the national average on the ACT and SET in all content areas. For state assessments, our trend remains the same. I will highlight here just a few things. There are a lot more highlights that we included in the application. But not only did our high school ninth grade students far exceed the state average in FY19, they were 15% higher for math and ELA, but they also increased their proficiency rates from the previous year from 2% to 8%. And you might note that At that time, I believe 3 of our high schools would have been a part of Project Momentum. Now all 5 of our high schools are. 8th grade science, DVUSD students scored 24% higher than the state average, and they consistently score an 80% proficiency level. Miss Allred tells me 4th grade does just as well, maybe even just a little bit better. 3rd through 5th grade students showed a 5 to 6% increase, 6% increase in LA between 2018 and 19, and our kindergarten students decreased from 30% to 14% for students needing intensive support from 2015 to 2019. This year, you know that we focused on the gap between our general education students and our subpopulation. So here is some of the data. This is from our benchmark data because we did not have our state assessment data at the time from last year to this year. So it shows that 25 of our pre-K 8 middle schools closed the gap between general education and special education, along with 4 of our 5 high schools. For EL, we closed the gap with 16 of our K-8 schools and 3 of our high schools. And we closed the gap between Caucasian students and African American students in 23 K-8 schools, 4 high schools. Between Caucasian students and Hispanic students, we closed the gap in 20 pre-K-8 schools and 1 high school. So we know and we believe that all of the schools aligning their school goals to this district goal and working throughout the year to close the gap in our various subpopulations is making a difference. It's evident that the alignment of the goals and the focus on Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction made a difference this year and will continue to do so in the future as we focus even stronger on the MTSS and PLC process. So we did receive the Model PLC District Awards. We're very proud of that. We do have a website that our teachers can go to. Everyone can access it now. It's now available to the public as well. So if you have a chance to check out the resources that are provided from our team and Dr. Galligan's team, it is pretty intensive, a lot of resources here. And then if you click on the PLC locator from Solution Tree, you can see these are all of the PLC model districts that have received the award in the nation. These are districts our size, and so there are 11 in the nation. These awards are actually offered globally, but no schools, no districts outside of the U.S. have received the award, so we can say that we're one of 11 in the world. So we're pretty proud of, really, it's our teachers and our principals and all of our departments and all of the work that everyone does for our students. So thank you.
Thank you all for your presentation this evening. Board members, are there any or comments? Mrs. Paperman?
Well, I would like to say as a classroom teacher, the best about PLC is building that relationship with the grade level team, collaborating, communicating, and looking at the reward of the progress throughout time. Thank you for the presentation.
Mrs. Ordway?
Okay, there it goes. It sticks. Great job. I know it's summer, kind of, sort of, for some of you. But these results in what I think is a short period of time, maybe, because nothing is quick in education. It's just exciting. And closing gaps is something that we've been working on for a long time, and this is not by accident. So I don't know how many of you guys over there are here for this, but thanks for coming, or the same for your side. So I guess PLC is working, and thank you very much for putting the work in.
Mrs. Fisher?
Thank you for the report. Having sat into PLCs for several years at other districts, it was just like, is this doing any good? Because you don't know. But all these years later, to see a report where it actually shows data, that there is something that's, that the outcome of the collaboration. I mean, I knew it was collaborative then. You see the teachers talking about, I don't have a resource for this, and someone else going, oh, that's not a problem, I got this. And the real support amongst the teachers themselves, building that strength. I could see it then, but to see the results is really impressive, and I thank you for bringing that data and sharing it with us.
Mrs. Reed? Mrs. Reed? Mrs.
Can you hear
Reed,
me
do you
now?
have any comments or questions?
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, perfect. I think I was muted, maybe. Thank you so much for the information and for the presentation. I think that was invaluable information to our parents and our community who I hope is watching. I know that parents are always curious, you know, when we have our 90-minute early release to know what our teachers are doing and to see whether or not that time that our students are away from the classroom, if it's really being applied in a positive way. And I'm happy that you were able to share this information so that we can share with our parents that it is being applied in a way that is meaningful and producing results. Is there a plan to share this information out in an email so that parents can see some of the data and also the new website?
Ms. Reed, we have shared the award, but I think we can talk further about more information that we could share out and provide to both our staff and to our parents.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for the time and the energy that you've put into this. And thank you to all of our model teachers that have dedicated extra time to just better the community. You know, when we rise the tide, everybody is more successful. So thank you so much for everything that you've done and that your team has done. I really appreciate it.
And I'm going to say ditto to the thank you, but I can't tell you how important and exciting it is to see the data that shows the improvements we are making on behalf of students. And that is for all students, not just our students who need additional assistance, but I know that our students who are normally doing well are also benefiting from this. So it's such an exciting thing to see come to fruition in essentially 2 years of work. And when we had, 15 months of that be under a pandemic, just speaks volumes about the work you all have done and all the teachers have done across our district. So look forward to seeing that continued data coming forward. Thank you all. And we'll move on to our next district report, which is the Remain in School report. And we'll have turn that over to Dr. Zerbach. I do believe that this is our last Remain in School report, maybe?
I believe that is true, President O'Brien. There may be some tears, but there are tissues that are in the room. Okay, good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch. It is our pleasure to provide what will likely be the last Remain in School report. We are going to jump right into our community level of transmission metrics, and with that, I will ask Mr. Miglerino to jump in.
President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, as we have presented in each of these reports, these are the metrics that Maricopa County Department of Health provides to us each Thursday morning. And there's not a significant change in the actual reporting. So at this point, our case count is at 78.57. The positivity rate did go up a little bit more than the case count. It's now at 8.37%. So that continues to have us in the substantial category for percent positivity, but in the moderate range for case count. The next slide actually has the 7-day epi curve. And as we have indicated in these previous reports, we use this for predictive modeling of what is going to happen with the metrics that we just looked at. And you can see that line is virtually flat for well over 2 months now. And so that is something that is I would say good news for us is the 7-day epi curve remains pretty much unchanged for some time. I think this is just my personal opinion, but I think this has mostly with the distribution of the vaccine. And so as the health professionals have certainly reminded us, the vaccine is an important component to us getting back to what I would consider to be some form of normal. And I know Dr. Zurbach will speak about that further in the report.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Our safety plan that is posted now on the website has been updated. This is a snip from that particular website. Again, for the community that is listening, it has a very user-friendly URL. It is simply dvusd.org/safety plan. The plan that had been up there for virtually the entire school year with a few updates along the way has been updated and revised for the summer programming, and it captures the rules of the game, if you will, for all of our summer programming. Community education, we have various programs through curriculum instruction, as well as pathways and some others. The most significant change that is reflected in the safety plan has to do with the face mask. And so with our transition to a face mask optional environment that went into effect today, we also have updated 3 administrative regulations that speak to the face mask. These 3 are posted here as sub-bullet points. It is JICA, KI, and GBGB. The JICA speaks to the student dress, KI speaks to visitors on campus, and GBGB speaks to staff. And so all 3 of those administrative regulations speak again to the notion that face masks are not required, but they are optional if staff or students or visitors so choose to do so. There is an exception to this that has been communicated in virtually all the communication that either I have sent out or communication from Mrs. Moffett and myself, and that has to do with transportation. There is an existing and standing CDC order, and I want to be clear on that. It is not guidance. It is a CDC order for mass transit, and it governs public school busing. And in that order, it does mandate that masks must still be worn by drivers, their assistants, and any students that are on that bus. The lone exception to that is when a driver is alone on a bus. And so it's important to note that that exception is still in place, and that is also on the safety plan. Okay, as far as summer programming, again, as I mentioned, there are several programs that are in place. There are many of these are listed for this. Mrs. Moffett and I did conduct COVID-19 emergency management training for the supervisors. Some of them, well, I should say really all of them, did not do the regular COVID management during the school year. So these are folks who this experience will be new to. And so we gave them a good overview of what to expect, reviewed key documents, and also talked about mandatory reporting procedures to the county if a case of COVID-19 should arise. And also, we talked about the quarantine and isolation protocols, as I have noted in the last board meeting and in the board updates that are required by state statute. And so we covered what is required by both the county and the state with respect to those protocols. Okay, as far as our vaccine update today, if you got to see my tweets, Constitution Elementary, this is their second year that they've had a community vaccination clinic, and so the clinic not only provided the COVID-19 vaccine, but it provided the opportunity for the community to get access to any of the child vaccines that are needed for school. And so we stopped by there. They had an interpreter there to help with families who needed a translator in Spanish. And there were many folks that came on by, and so that was a great event. I thank Principal Cheyenne and her crew for working to set that up. We are currently in talks with Honor Health as well. Honor Health is wanting to support us with providing access to the vaccine for those families that choose to do that in our Title I communities. And so we'll continue to work with them as we do want to provide access to our families who are most in need, and we'll continue to do that. We also may work with our county partners, and that is with Maricopa County Department of Public Health, along with Safeway and Fry's, if we provide additional vaccination opportunities at one of our sites. And so that I will continue to report to you in the board updates. And as a reminder, the COVID-19 vaccine is optional. It is not a required vaccine for our students and nor for our staff. Okay, next up is our summer feeding program. Mr. McGlynn, do you want to jump in on this one?
Certainly. So this is just kind of an update where we're at with our summer feeding. We're basically running what I would consider to be two programs. We will continue to run our curbside meal service starting next week on June 1st. It'll go through July 1st. We have 3 school campus locations and 2 bus stop locations that we will be providing those meals. These are open to the public, so any student or anybody 18 years or younger can stop by and pick up a meal at the locations. The curbside meal locations, that's a link there. It's a URL, dvusd.org/food. Will take you to those locations for the curbside meal. We will also be doing on-site meal service at a number of campuses where we have summer enrichment programs ongoing, and we have a list of those available. So there's 14 campuses plus 2 associate sites. I know I'm going to probably say this wrong, the Booth Center, or however it's pronounced, I apologize, as well as the Deer Valley Community Center. We'll be providing meals for our students. Those, again, are not open to the public. For the bus stops, I wanted to mention the picture in the lower right-hand corner is our DV Diner bus. So this is a bus that was decommissioned, was not able to be certified by the Department of Public Safety for transporting students. So we hope to be able to deploy the DV Diner bus for the distribution, the curbside distribution at the 2 bus stop locations. All of the feeding is going to be covered as the extension of the USDA Summer Food Service Program, which is continued through all of next year at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Miglorino. And I would like to reiterate and highlight just one aspect that Jim spoke to, and that's the notion that it is available to any of those students that are 18 and under. And so whether the students are from charter schools, private schools, if they are homeschooled, if they are in the homeschool daycare type pieces that meet the age, that the public school district is the one that leads the way with that. And so just as we did in the beginning of the pandemic and led the way with food distribution along with vaccine distribution, the district will continue to do so in the manner that we have done in the past. Okay, and with that, I will ask my partner, Dr. G, to take over Return to Learning. Dr. Galligan.
Thank you. Over the past couple of board meetings, there have been public comments, some about critical race theory. So we wanted to be very clear about this idea of critical race theory in Deer Valley. It is not one that Deer Valley embraces, nor is it in any of our curriculum guides. There are no plans to adjust this position in the future. We teach to the Arizona academic standards, and that is what our curriculum guides are built upon, and that is what our courses are built upon. Our board adopts resources, and anytime any changes would happen to curriculum based on standards, those come before the board, and the board makes decisions and approves any changes. At this point in time, critical race theory is not part of anything in Deer Valley. You can say that it may happen in classrooms, and you know what? If there is a topic that is brought up in a classroom and it is brought to the principal's attention, it is dealt with immediately. And we take care of that through our HR processes, and then we communicate with our parents. But as far as critical race theory in Deer Valley, it is not existent. And we just wanted to make sure that each of you on our board were aware of that and felt confident. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. Okay, next up, Mrs. Moffett with Return to Work. Jenna.
All right, a few updates of interest from Human Resources I shared with the board in the Friday update that our administrators, district-wide, schools and departments continue to plug away at filling vacancies. This is on par with previous years. What we do know right now is gone are the days from about 6 years ago when we could report we were 99% staffed at this point in the year, and that just isn't the case any longer. So we continue to work at filling those vacancies. A point to bring up is that transfer ends the last contract day of our 10-month administrators. So that transfer timeline will expire next week, and then we will be filling certified vacancies from the outside. Next slide, Gary. We also sent a memo out. I think Gary references, sorry for the feedback. I'm do my best here. To share with staff some immediate changes that we made around the work environment. Gary mentioned mask optional. We also made sure that people understood that they could use communal areas and could resume in using refrigerators, ice machines, which Dr. Galligan is thrilled. She loves the ice machine and other appliances. And then we also put forth some gathering guidelines for all of our supervisors that are organizing professional development opportunities or meeting opportunities. And then also that masks are optional in vehicles. We have many staff members that do have to ride together in vehicles as part of their workday, and masks in those vehicles will be optional, and that's the exception to that would be the bus, as Dr. Zerbach outlined. And then we're also working on some documents for the opening of next school year, such as the Managing COVID-19 in the Workplace document that will still need to exist but will require updating. We will still require all employees to sign the telecommuting forms, though there will be very few employees that would qualify to telecommute. You just never know, and we want to be prepared. And so that will still be part of the annual documents. Reporting and responding guidelines will be updated. Site and portal will also be updated. And then we do have employees that are currently working and will continue to work through the summertime. So we do want to make sure that report any COVID situation at covidreport.dvusd.org.
Okay, in our next slide, we are going to also make sure that folks are aware about our program at Vista Peak, which is the medically fragile programming. And Melissa, do you want to speak to that some?
Thank you, Jenna, for giving me the feedback mic. Good evening, Governing Board, President O'Brien, Dr. Finch. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak about this program option. This is a very exciting topic for me and for Student Support Services as well as Vista Peak. We have been doing a lot of analysis and work in our Futures Work team. And one of the ideas that came from our Behavior Service Model work team was the further expansion of Vista Peak School. And so we're very excited to talk about an option to bring some of our students back from other private placements outside of the school district to receive instruction closer to home. That is what the federal government provides us as guidance, and so we're thrilled to be able to provide this opportunity. Our first focus for the classroom is grades K through 3, and we also have future vertical planning options so we can make sure that our students are supported all the way through graduation and past transition. So please know that you will stay tuned for further updates on this, but we're hopeful to bring students back this fall, starting 2021, and the location will be Vista Peak. And as a population, this is one of the most rewarding populations to work with. I had the honor to work with this population for 1 year in my teaching career, and it was very fulfilling. And so we're thrilled about this opportunity.
And some of this as well, important to note for the board, was highlighted as opportunities within the Futures Report as far as where the district could make progress in the future. Thank you, Dr. McCusker.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, that brings us to our last slide. And before I turn it back to you, President O'Brien, I just would like to say that it was great to see our senior classes graduate last week on Thursday and Friday. I saw probably 2,500 folks or so walk across that stage from our 5 high schools, and it certainly brought quite a smile to my face, and I know it did for you too, to see the work that the staff and the students and the administrators did over the course of the school year, and to see it culminate in such a great way in those ceremonies. So with that, we have finished, and we will certainly entertain questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zerbach. Mrs. Reed, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Zerbach, I did pull up the safety plan page on the district website, and there's just one little typo that needs to be fixed regarding the date. Underneath the visitor section, it still has the June 6th date on there for face masks. So if you wouldn't mind just double checking that, just to make sure that we're on the same page, because I know that we'll get emails asking for clarification on that.
Sure.
But that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Fisher?
You're right, we have gone back and forth with this critical race theory topic. And I think it's because of, well, the ASBA training that went out, or that happened. And that has hit a lot of other districts. And I came here tonight thinking, well, I'm going to defend Deer Valley, and I'm still going to defend Deer Valley, because I've looked at our curriculum, I've looked through, I take what parents bring to me very serious, and I have taken the time to look through, and I don't find it in anything we've adopted. I don't find it in anything that is considered that we're promoting or putting out. However, when I got here tonight, I received an envelope from parents of school. I haven't gone completely through it, but it started with a big please help. There's a teacher teaching 1619 and critical race theory. Please help us. So that's all I'm going to say about that, because I'm going to scan it when I get home and send it to Dr. Finch and to yourself. But I want to reassure the parents that if there's a rogue teacher going out and teaching something that's inappropriate, it doesn't mean that the district has accepted it or has promoted it. It just means that someone is stepping out of line. I guess the ask I would have for the district or for our administration is, I don't know if maybe we need a better path. Some of the parents, the thing that I noted in the packet, because I've only briefly looked at the first couple of pages, was that they didn't want to put their names. And we have over the years received anonymous things because parents are afraid of retaliation, or and a lot of the people will talk to me and they'll say, well, I want to talk to you, but I don't want you to give my name. I'm afraid my kids will face retaliation. I'm afraid I will be ostracized. I don't know if we have, we did years ago have a anonymous reporting system. It was for something else, but I don't know if maybe we have that. Maybe it would help secure for our parents, just give them an avenue. Our parents just want to be heard. And I was just, like I said, I was here ready to say it's period, not here. I even reviewed some curriculum that parents thought was questionable, and I thought, well, it could be, but you don't know how they're teaching it. And I discussed it with a former teacher, and she said the same thing, is, yeah, this, it could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is. So I just want us to be understanding, but I want us to also find a way to give our parents a secured way to report, I guess. I understand their fear. I tell them all the time, it's like, you see me get doxxed on there, on social media or on whatever, I asked for it, I ran for office. I'm still going to call it out, but parents didn't. Parents just want to fight for their kids, and so I just ask that we find a way to honor them. But like I said, I'll send you the packet. That's all I can do.
Mrs. Paperman?
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Dr. Galligan, for presenting the critical race theory. I know as a teacher, it's been very stressful with the media, and all we want to do is teach in peace, teach to the academic. Also, I just want to make sure that, because another issue that's sex education in the classroom, I just want to make sure that Deer Valley is also not going to be teaching that curriculum.
Dr. Galligan, could you explain what Deer Valley does provide as it relates to sex education?
President O'Brien, Ms. Paperman, we really don't promote sex education in Deer Valley's public school system. Now, with that said, in our 9th grade health courses, as part of the state standards, sex education isn't per se the standard, but it does look at reproductive systems and those types of things. I believe Ms. Fisher reviewed our resources for health, and I feel confident again in saying that we don't teach sex education other than what we have for the standards in health courses in our 9th grade.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. And if a parent wanted to review the resources or the materials that we use to teach that 9th grade health, where might they find it?
President O'Brien, they can always reach out to me. They can reach out to Sheila in the superintendent's office. We will make the resources available for them to review here at the district office, just as Ms. Fisher did, and they would have that opportunity.
Excellent. And those emails addresses can be found on the website. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Ms. O'Brien, may I just add that I did review it, and if it helps, Ms. Paperman, I did mention at the last meeting, but it is, what is in there is none of the comprehensive sex education that is the thing across the state. It is not in Deer Valley, it's not in our curriculum. Now that, again, not to say someone might go rogue, but it is, I reviewed it, in fact, I reviewed it twice. And it is a reasonable curriculum.
Thank you. Mrs. Paperman, did you have anything else?
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Mrs. Ordway?
Appreciate that this is the last Remain in School report, because we are in school and we're going to stay there, I'm guessing. When we receive anonymous things, there's usually 2 reasons for it. One reason is that there's a fear of a repercussion, and the other one is so fear-mongering can take a seat and go for a ride. So I do appreciate and applaud Dr. Galligan for taking these things that have been put out there and addressing them head on. And Ms. Moffitt, could you go over a little bit, and then in more detail in a Friday update, when our teachers go through and get their certificate, there are ways or methods that they teach things that could be controversial, like history or language arts. So they aren't taught how to address something that could be controversial in a whole way, in a 360-degree way, correct?
President O'Brien, Ms. Ordway, it's dependent upon their prep program, but it is part of what we do with onboarding here in Deer Valley, So we do make sure that our teachers understand that we do have adopted curriculum. Dr. Galligan and her department put forward curriculum maps and other guidelines, and that they are to stick to those maps and guidelines in our district.
Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. And Mrs. Moffett, sorry, you put your microphone away just a little too quickly, because one of the things that was addressed is that if a parent does have a concern and it is vetted and found to be that they have gone outside of policy guidelines curriculum, I know there are actions taken by HR. Could you explain a little bit about how that happens and about confidentiality?
President O'Brien, sometimes it is dependent on how the information is learned. So there are specific processes that we follow if the information comes from the public versus information coming from one employee to another. But either way, we are obligated to investigate it and to provide the employee with due process or the opportunity to present their side of the story and to be confronted with all the facts that we have investigated. So depending on the infraction, any infraction has the possibility of anything from an express directive, which would be a direction to the employee that is non-disciplinary, that they should not move forward with that type of behavior, all the way up to termination. Really would be the most severe consequence that could be issued to an employee for violating a policy. And that typically would be, in this situation, in this specific topic, would be multiple violations or more than one at least.
And do we share employee discipline with anyone?
The discipline itself does remain confidential, but that does not prevent us from disclosing to, let's say, a parent shared it. We can disclose that indeed there was a violation. We agree, we've investigated it, we may disagree on some of the details, we may agree on all the details, but we can share what the outcome to the investigation was, not necessarily the outcome to the employee.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I would like to thank you all once again for a comprehensive report regarding remaining in school. I look forward to us, no offense, Dr. Zurbach, not doing this anymore. While they have been excellent, I'm sure you all won't be any sadder or less sad, more sad, I'm not sure of the right phrase there, that we won't be doing these in the future. And as we start to return to pre-COVID concepts. All right, with that, we will go to our call to public. We have 2 public comments, and Mrs. Ordway is going to read the statement.
Yes. The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. To accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten speakers' times. Vulgarity, disruptive comments, conduct, remarks disrespecting employees by name will not be allowed. The governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism, ask staff to review a matter, or request a future agenda item. And there are 2 of you, David Alvarado, and there's a mic right by the door, and then Jessica Trejo.
If you would please state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes. They'll show you the time on the screen up there, and then, thank you.
My name is, can I raise this? So I don't have to duck down. My name is David Alvarado. Thanks for the opportunity to express a little bit of what's already been mentioned tonight, and that's on the topic of critical race theory. It's a topic that's making its rounds in the public square, and I just, as a community member, as a grandfather, a father, as a former educator, as a business person, and as a proud American, I see that this issue is really becoming more and more of a talking point, and the discussions are not readily available to have a, I would say, a friendly discussion. So I'm going to be as quick as I can. There's two sides to this coin in regards to the definition. Where did this idea originate from? Critical race theories originates back in the 1970s as various legal scholars, including Derek Bell, black civil rights lawyer who taught at Harvard School, began to examine how the law and legal system served interests of the wealthy and powerful at the expense of others. Critical race theory, also known as CRT, became an official term in 1989. And the key tenets of this theory, most agreed upon by proponents, are that racism is a common experience faced by people of color in the United States, that it is institutional in the United States, and that it benefits white people. The theory examines systemic racism as a part of American life and institutions and how it can give white people an advantage. Therefore, they use the terminology white privilege. On the other side of the coin, CRT is an ideology that is descendant of critical theory, a school of philosophy that began in Frankfurt, Germany, back in the late 20s, early 30s at the University of Frankfurt's Institute of Social Research. It became known as a Frankfurt School. It was one of the first, if not the first, Western Marxist schools patterned after the Marx Engels Institute in Moscow. Fast forward, the Nazis did not like this. And so people who were studying this were very careful to erase the word Marxism from their research papers so as not to attract attention when they fled Europe and came to the United States. I can go on and on with this. You probably see the differentiation already. It's a topic that is being squelched, and we need to attack it head on. Just saying that we're not going to, or it's not being implemented in the school district is not good enough, because the other side says they take an inch and they get more. The other side needs to say, enough's enough. We won't even bring it up. I'm sorry, but that's how it goes. And so we need to be very careful on how we present this going forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jessica Trejo. Will you please state your name for the record, and then your time will begin.
My name is Jessica Trejo. So we've been coming here for a few weeks trying to get you to listen. Don't you think that it's a problem that we're still coming and repeating the same things? This district is my home. It's my children's home, and I didn't sign up for this. I expect you all to do your job in educating my children, and I don't know where that line got so blurry for you, but it has. We have become adversaries instead of partners. The mask issue, these policies you've created, this is not education. You act like it's over, but even in the room, we're still limited to how many people we can have in here. There's more space than for another 15, 20 people, if not more. But we're still holding that line in more extreme fashions than we need to. You announced the summer program. It seems like that's not going away for those kids. My son has a peanut allergy, but I still let him choose the foods that he eats, even things that have been processed within a facility with nuts, because eventually he'll be an adult and it's his right to choose what risks make sense for him. Health is our right as parents and individuals. It's not an education policy. None of this should be in the policy. We've seen it. We've seen the language. It leaves it wide open that you guys can make changes subjectively, because there is no definitive thing. It shouldn't be in the policy. We live in a great district. Everybody has said it, and I know that there are a lot of parents worried and concerned that the district is hiding critical race theory. I also am not yet convinced. But the problem is the way the district is managing these concerns. You were talking about parents reporting. Well, how does is the district aware of how often things get reported? Are you guys tracking it? Are you paying attention to it? Yes, it could be a one-off. It could be this teacher. It could be that teacher. But if you're just letting it happen at the schools, you don't really know. And that's what you said. It's happening at the schools. You're not tracking it. You don't even know how often it's happening. if you need to address it with all teachers. That's an issue. Instead of working with these parents and validating their concerns and providing any kind of reporting, you're in denial. It's not happening here. If you were proactive in the community and started working on a solution, maybe things would get better. Unfortunately, I don't really see that that's happening. You run surveys and you don't show us the results. You don't run surveys when we think it's important to. You choose the same parents over and over to be in your committees. You have zero transparency and you're trying to policy yourself into zero accountability. We won't stand for this. There are things you all have done that cannot be undone. You allowed a teacher to resign who harmed a student, multiple students. You left his credentials intact.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is up. All right, we will move on to consent agenda.
I would make a motion that the governing board approve consent agenda items 5A through 5S.
Do I have a second? Thank you. I have a motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. So we will now move on to action item 6A.
Oh, sorry. All right, I would make a motion that the governing board accept the administrator's recommendation to pre-approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from governing board members? Mrs. Reed, you'll need to unmute if you have some. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Reed. If we'll have any comments or discussion. Great. Thank you very much. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Item 6B, please.
The governing board accept. There we go. That the governing board accept. Are we done? Okay.
Go, keep going.
Make a motion that the governing board accept the Deer Valley Unified School District FY20 financial audit and compliance questionnaire completed by Heinfield Meach and Company. And just a reminder, when we get to the vote, this is a roll call vote.
Yes, ma'am. Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Thank you. Mrs. Mock.
President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests. I am honored to present the FY20. Yes, that is FY20. We are going back in time a year, even though we are mere months away from the 21-22 school year and from finishing the 2020-2021 school year. We are now going to look at our financial audit, the compliance questionnaire, and the single audit reporting package from FY20. Those documents are typically finished in February or March, and then we give our internal auditors time to prepare a corrective action plan. We had planned to just present this as a report to you this evening. However, this legislative session, House Bill 2018, amended sections 15271, 15905, and most of those were grammatical changes. But when we look at 15914 and compliance audits, they added item H there, which is a school district governing board or a charter school governing body shall publicly accept all audits and compliant questionnaires by roll call vote. This actually doesn't go into place until the audit's completed for FY21, but since we had plans to bring it to you this evening, we thought we would move it from a report to an action item kind of as a trial run. Before I start on the audit itself, I just want to let you know and thank all of our registrars, our accounting clerks, our finance department, our purchasing department. There are so many individuals on the business side of the district whose work is reviewed by the audit and the compliance questionnaire, and I want to thank them for the wonderful work that they've done. Our annual financial audit typically provides us with three major reports. Our current auditors are Heinfield Meach and Company, And for FY20, they provided us with our Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or our CAFR, our Uniform System of Financial Records Compliance Questionnaire, and our Single Audit Reporting Package. The CAFR is now available on our Budget 411 website, where all of our budget information is housed for public transparency. We soon will place the USFR Compliance Questionnaire from FY20 and the Single Audit Reporting Package for FY20 as well. Jenna, you get the mic with feedback. I get the one that randomly cuts in and out. We're going to start with the USFR Compliance Questionnaire. The Compliance Questionnaire has questions for 17 different categories, and I counted. There are approximately 176 questions worth of data that our auditors go through on an annual basis. You can see those categories there with an asterisk. Those were the 5 areas out of the 17 where Deer Valley Unified School District for FY20 received or were considered questions that had an area of non-compliance. Overall for FY20, Heinfeld-Meach provided us with the averages, and the average was 16 for all of those 176 questions. And we had 14 areas overall, so I think we fared pretty well and we're below the average. And from my point of view as well, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we don't consider audits as punitive. We actually appreciate the feedback that we receive from Heinfeld-Meach in our audits as opportunities for improvement. We work very hard throughout the year using our internal auditors and other systems we have in place to ensure compliance for all of our departments. But sometimes we do miss things, and so we appreciate the partnership we have with Heinfeld-Meach to help make sure that we are always improving our processes. We're going to start with the first overall category. We had area of non-compliance. We'll actually talk about 3 items under governing board and management procedures, but only 2 of them were actually areas of non-compliance. Thanks to our old friend COVID, we changed our meeting structure last year and unfortunately did end up with an area of non-compliance for our July 14th meeting, specifically with our public comments. We did correct that at our October 14th governing board meeting by reading a public statement. In case you're wondering about that July 14th date, that actually is the 2021 school year, and I asked the auditors about that, and they actually had the opportunity to place that in either fiscal year, but we thought it best to get it over with as far as the findings go and be done with it and put it behind us with our good friend COVID as well. Another area of non-compliance we received for that area was conflict of interest statement was not on file for an employee who was also a vendor. This particular employee was an employee by coaching addenda only and was not an FTE employee with the district. And so what we found was that we had not been giving our addendum employees only the conflict of interest statement that we provide to all of the rest of our employees at the beginning of the school year or the beginning of their employment. So that is a change that is going into place for next year as well. And I don't know for sure if we've already started it this year, but we also are continuing to work with departments involved to prevent future occurrences. Some things that we can do are run checks on addresses and names between our vendor database and our employee database and double check to make sure that we have that conflict of interest on file. I do want to make note that for those of you who are up on your procurement law, you know that in order to purchase from an employee, that that company has to be procured through a sealed bid, and the company in question here was procured by a sealed bid. Otherwise, that probably could have been another component of the audit finding, but in this case, it was just that we did not have that conflict of interest on file. This is our third item that really was not an area of non-compliance, but if you look at the multiple page compliance questionnaire and look at all the comments that were made, you will find a comment under this item. This item is specifically whether or not the district reported to the Auditor General timely any areas of employee theft. And indeed, we caught and immediately reported an area of employee theft, and it was for an employee who was using a P card for personal purchases and was claiming them as district purchases. The employee supervisor caught the misuse. It was a verified amount of theft of $197. We reported to the Auditor General and the Phoenix Police, And accounts payable and internal audit have a process actually to identify misuse and to suspend those cards for users who are not using them appropriately for our purchasing cards. In addition, our internal auditors are working on an administrative management guideline for proper and quick reporting for any potential employee theft. The next area for noncompliance was accounting records. We have quite a few of them, so this gives us opportunities for lots of records to be checked during our audit. And one of the areas of noncompliance was a journal entry that was tested was not signed. One of the things that we took advantage of during COVID was using the electronic journal entry workflow through our Infinite Visions financial software. And with the Infinite Visions financial software, each journal entry will show date and time stamped, who submitted it, who approved it, and then who posted it. So we will have 2 to 3 layers of approval for each of those electronic journal entries. Occasionally, we have a journal entry that's really large and will not work through that process, and we work through those and those receive manual approvals. That one was an easy fix. We had a couple coding errors that were non-compliance. They were out of compliance with USFR chart of accounts. Even though there are 4 listed, these do only count for one area of non-compliance. We had a minor grant funding coding error that was corrected in the current year, and those were some of the grant funds that came up at the end of the year for ESSER and some of the other grant funds. We did have 2 disbursements that inadvertently had the wrong object code, and we are now in the current year and moving forward using the correct object code. Same year refunds were coded as an expense versus a negative revenue. So we have made sure that within the accounting department that those who review refunds are making sure that we have the correct object code and we have the correct language in the refunds as well, so that we know whether it should be an expense if it was a refund from the prior year or a negative revenue. And we just had a clerical error with one state aid payment where the revenue was coded to the wrong object code. In addition to the fixes listed specifically for those 4 items, our internal auditors now have an annual review process for reviewing coding and changes to the USFR and implementing those changes for the following school year.
Ms. Ma, could you quickly just explain what an object code is for those that may not know?
Well, I don't know how long we want to stay here for this board meeting, but there are 5 components to an object.
Very easy one.
There are 5 components to an accounting code. And the object code is the 4th set of 4 numbers, or 4th set of numbers, which is 4 numbers in the account code string. And it basically tells you whether it's a revenue or whether it's expense and what type of expense, whether it is software, staffing, whether it's personnel, benefits, staffing, purchase service, or I can't think of the capital items, 6700s for capital items, which are your other items as well. But it just tells you what type of expense or revenue is coming in.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Cash revenue, we had one area of noncompliance, so I do want to give a shout out to all of our accounting clerks who are out there in the schools. We're dealing with, and the teachers as well. There's a lot of money coming into the classroom in the schools on a regular basis, and to have one finding, we don't like any findings, but we're not unrealistic. We know that we're going to have them from time to time. So the one that we received for FY20 was the currency was not deposited timely, which is within 5 days of receipt. All of our campuses are required to make a weekly deposit. Our internal auditors test deposits for timeliness during their internal audits as well. Since our audit process only tests 3 schools per year, and we have quite a few more than that, we're making sure that we are going out to the schools on a regular basis to test those items. We are also in the process of implementing the ability to accept electronic payments in our K-6s, K-8s, and middle school, already have at our high schools. We believe that this will help with some of these audit findings as well. Credit cards and P cards. A P card is a purchasing card, and those are used specifically by staff for, sorry, I want to make sure I have my notes. They're used in the place of a PO or other purchasing process. You can use them much like you would use a credit card, but they have different guidelines, different spending limits, and just different ways to lock out certain purchases. We did not have any findings for our P cards, but our credit cards, which are specifically used for fuel, we did have one area of noncompliance. P cards are, each P card holder is required to have one training and one user agreement when the card is assigned to them. Credit cards, on the other hand, each person who may touch any part of the process for the credit card, and that's from issuing the card to a school to processing the payments, is required to complete an annual training. And we do have an annual training video that's available to those folks who will use it. But the auditors found that for 3 individuals, I think it was 3 out of 10, they tested whether or not they had that signed user agreement stating that they had watched the annual training. Those were not in place. Our internal auditors are adding that review to their list of annual reviews as well, so that they can test to make sure that those using those fuel credit cards have signed their annual user agreements. Student attendance reporting. With over 32,000 students, give or take, depending on the year, it's easy to see why this area is probably going to, on an annual basis, could possibly have the highest amount of noncompliance. We actually have had years in the past where we had no areas of noncompliance. But considering FY20 and the way it ended, we actually were not disappointed or surprised by the results that we have here. Student absences, this item accounts for 2 of the areas of noncompliance, the elementary, middle school, and high school. Those 5 students tested that showed the absences reported incorrectly are one of the areas. And the high school CTED, which is a career and technical education district satellite, which we are, had 4 students. We have student absence findings frequently, and it's because we do use a calculator for the students coming in and out midday that helps the registrars and attendance clerks to know whether or not to mark the student partially absent or fully absent for the day, and just sometimes we miss the mark. The middle school and elementary, so I think the high school resulted in a net zero for the absences, but absences do not count against our ADM. That doesn't stop us from trying to make sure that we're reporting correctly, but we just find these errors on a continuing basis. Absences at high school are a little bit different as well because they're reported by period. And so at the high school level, they're taking a look at when the student came in or left during the period to determine whether they were absent for that entire period, part of that period, or the entire day moving forward. And since the high school CTED students are in and out on a daily basis, it is not uncommon to see more of those differentials. And these the students tested didn't end with any more than, I think, 1 or 2 absences over or understatement from what we should have reported. This, again, is part of the internal audit when our internal auditors go out to the schools. CTED satellite enrollment, undetermined if it was reported correctly for 1 student, and for 1 student exceeded 1.25 FTE. This was a very unique situation that we don't expect to see happen again. We had a student enrolled in a CTE, all of our students enrolled in CTE programs are allowed, the district and the districts are allowed to claim a 1.25 FTE enrollment. The findings in these cases, sometimes we share those students with WestMec. And if the enrollment, we submit the enrollment based on how many courses the students enrolled in Deer Valley, and WestMec will do the same. And regardless of if our records are accurate, if between the 2 districts, the auditors cannot show validity that the student should have been enrolled in 1.25 programs, or 1.2 FTE for the programs and the courses in which they are enrolled, we receive the finding. And the same thing would happen if they were, the auditors were auditing WestMec and they found those same type of concurrencies. Even if their records were correct, they would receive the finding. We did verify the enrollment for both of the students in these findings, and we don't like it because our records were correct, but we received the findings anyway. One of them was very unique. It was a student who was with us for a week, and our records were accurate. But we do work very hard with our registrars and our lead registrar to make sure that we are submitting the correct information. Another one that I might sound a little bitter about, but is our AOI minutes not reported correctly for 3 students. All 3 of these students, we chose not to submit the AOI minutes. We would choose that because these students were already enrolled in 4 courses at the brick and mortar, which qualifies them for a 1.0 FTE at the actual campus. Had we submitted the minutes for their Arizona Online Instruction, or their AOI, our Deer Valley Online program, we would have created a concurrency against ourselves, and it would have been a part-time concurrency with our online program, and that portion of the concurrency would have been funded at only 85%. So had we done so, we would have lost money. However, the finding stands, and because we did not submit any minutes for those 3 students. Proof of residency, we had 1 file that was tested that resulted in 2 areas of noncompliance, and it was a parent or guardian documentation that did not agree with the provided documents. I believe the name on the registration paperwork did not agree to the name on the identification provided. Our registrars work very hard. They keep tickler files, actually, and continue to follow up with parents throughout the school year whenever they have outstanding documentation. But in this case, we received a finding for those 2 documents not agreeing, and then also submitting that student for ADM because we could not prove that they were an actual resident of the state of Arizona. We had 1 withdrawal where it was entered into our student information system more than 5 working days from the date of entry, or the date of exit. We have 5 days from entry or exit to get that information into our student information system, which then links automatically to the state system. Our internal auditors also test entry and withdrawal timeliness as part of their internal audit. Because again, our external auditors are only checking 3 schools per year, so we want to make sure that we get ahead of that, and we're testing each of our schools on a regular basis. We did have some withdrawal dates where the withdrawal date was not the last date of attendance, and we had a couple where the students were withdrawn prior to 10 consecutive unexcused absences. We are required by law to withdraw any students that have more, once they get to that 11th, probably about the 10th day, on the 11th day, we would withdraw them back to the last date of attendance for those 10 consecutive unexcused absences. Withdrawal dates are, we had a couple with the withdrawal date was not the last date of attendance. The withdrawal date was entered. No, can't read my own bullets there. I apologize. Withdrawal dates should be entered for the last date of attendance. We must withdraw the students with 10 consecutive unexcused, and internal auditors, again, check these items and all of the student attendance items as part of their student attendance reporting. We also have a fantastic lead registrar who continually works with all of our registrars in all the schools, ongoing training for these processes as well. The single audit reporting package. Thankfully, this is only 1 slide compared to the compliance questionnaire, which the compliance questionnaire clearly is the major portion of our external audit. We're happy to report that our single audit reporting package, which tests the compliance for our major federal programs. This is a requirement of the Office of Management and Budget in their compliance supplement. And this one's much easier, in the opinion of Heinfeld and Meach, DVUSD, in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs. So basically, we complied. So that moves us into the current year, of which we are nearly complete. Our preliminary work for this year will start in mid-July. Usually we like to start actually in April, testing some of those student attendance and registration files while the registrars are still here. But we just were not able to adhere to the same timelines this year that we had for the past years. So we're going to begin that work in mid-July. The school test work that we mentioned will start then in early August, and the remaining test work will be completed at the district office typically between October and November. Our CAFR, as mentioned in one of the first slides, is due to be completed by December 31st of each year, and that compliance questionnaire and the SARP by the end of March. Then we expect to take that time between March and May for our internal auditors to work on our corrective action plans and get those implemented. And we plan to, by the last board meeting in May for next year, to bring the FY21 compliance questionnaire and SARP to the board for acceptance. And not necessarily knowing the reasoning behind the change to the law brought about by HB 2018. The audit reports are what they are. Whether or not the governing board accepts it is not going to change the findings. But we hope that you appreciate the work that the internal and the schools are doing. I feel like Josh is back there, like, just, it's the gong, it's wrap it up. But we hope that you appreciate the work that we're doing, implementing the changes to make sure that we have fewer than average findings on an annual basis. I always say that the more nitpicky the audit findings get, that means the better that we are doing, because that low-hanging fruit is out the door. And I'll take any questions.
Mrs. Reed, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you so much for the report.
Thank you. Mrs. Paperman?
No question, thank you.
Mrs. Fisher?
I just have a couple of comments. Initially, when I looked, I thought, okay, well, there's small sample size and a lot of findings for these, but then I realized this is not a bad audit at all. I've seen, it really isn't. It is minuscule things, and so long as you've addressed them with internal auditors. But I do want the public to know they're more than welcome to go to the Auditor General's office, and they can download the USFR for 369 pages of lovely reading. They can understand exactly what this all is with the questionnaire at the end. Thank you for doing a good job and for taking the steps to fix any of the issues that were found, because no matter what, they seem to always find something. And even when you're right, the auditors do not change their mind.
Mrs. Ordway?
Thank you for the most beautiful auditor report, and we will make sure we vote in a roll call.
Thank you, Mrs. Mock. I do appreciate that. So we will have a roll call vote. Mrs. Fisher?
Aye.
Mrs. Paperman?
Aye.
Mrs. Reed?
Aye.
Mrs. Ordway?
Aye.
And Mrs. O'Brien, I vote aye. Well, you said roll call, so, all right, if we could have a motion for action item 6C.
Wow, that's so much fun. Okay, so we will ask the governing board to approve and accept the administration's recommendation to approve an additional hourly rate of $2 per hour for any bus driver driving a bus with students from May 24th through July 30th, 2021.
Mr. Miglerino. Oh, sorry, may I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you so much, Mr. Miglerino.
President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch, as we have shared with you on multiple occasions, we have increased the number of opportunities for summer academic enrichment. And in order to try and maximize the opportunities for students, we have offered transportation services to be able to get those students to the locations where the services will be provided. Unfortunately, many of our staff members are not accustomed to working in the summer that drive buses. And so as we reached out to many of them, they had alternative plans, whether it was a different job or other commitments. So in working with Director Mesa, it is his recommendation that we support that we increase the hourly rate of pay for the bus drivers. So these would be bus drivers driving a bus with students. so that we can cover the routes for those increased number of opportunities for students. It is noted in the cover that we will be funding this with some of the federal stimulus money from our ESSER funds. And knowing that the ESSER 3 requirement, the third federal stimulus, has a requirement for a student to address student learning loss. This is one of the key components of the increased number of enrichment programs that we're offering this summer. So we're specifically targeting that because there is a 20% set aside within that stimulus package. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Maglarino. Any questions or comments from board members? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously, and we will move to action item 6D.
Oh, I'll get in trouble if I don't vote first. Okay, it's in there. I would move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation and approve the certified and classified negotiated language.
Hold on one second. We're not quite done. I know.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Please finish your motion.
Oh, you want me to start again? I guess so. I would move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation and approve the certified and classified negotiated language tentative agreement number 70 for 2021-2022 school year.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you so much. And then we will go to Mrs. Moffett.
Hey, good evening again, President O'Brien, governing board members, Dr. Finch, and audience. Mr. Ettenborough and I are here today to present to you all the work that has been done over this last school year in the area of language. So a previous report I shared with you how the NS teams work. This one is specifically to the employee agreements. I want to also recognize that the president of DVUSD is here, Stephen Lunds, sitting behind me. He worked very hard with Mr. Ettenborough this year, looking at not only specifically language, but working on a couple of teams that had to do some pre-work for language this year. I also would like to recognize Harley Kilman, the DVEA president. He did have plans to be here, but he is not feeling well right now, but he did email me today to let me know that DVEA has ratified this agreement. So the team for certified, Kim Crooks, Brittany Sutton sits on this team, Harley and Kelly Fisher. The classified team, Trevor, Steve, Jeff Kingsley, Jay Kopis, Tim Yates, Jennifer Fusco, and Julie Zelski. Sorry, Julie. So we're going to first go over some certified recommendations for change. Many of these this last year and each year, we take a look at the entire manual to see if there are any things that need edited or updated. They're not significant process changes, rather just adjustments to make the manual a little bit cleaner. So that's what you'll see here on this specific page, is that the team recommended that we remove one of the definitions, as that definition was put there to highlight a leave conversion table that we put in many years ago. I believe in the year 12-13 that was placed in there. Team didn't believe it needed to be part of the definitions any longer. We also changed intervention specialist to special education strategist. That was a name change that occurred quite a long time ago and never made it over to the manual. And we also added general leave as another reason that someone would not lose their longevity or their seniority years of service. In the next section, under improvement of instruction and teacher evaluation, if you recall, we did have an evaluation committee that came together earlier in the fall, and that committee made a recommendation to the governing board. Statute did allow for the governing board to approve a practice for Deer Valley that would allow for us to implement an alternative cycle for employees or certified teachers who had 3 years of highly effective performance evaluations. And so the board did adopt that practice, and that is now reflected in the certified manual. This one is a more significant process change for us. So under this section, vacancies, transfers, and assignments, our part-time limited employees, these are employees that are hired as part-time employees and do not receive continuing status because they are hired as part-time employees. We do have employees that are part-time continuing employees. Those are employees who have been full-time certified employees for over 3 consecutive years. If they reduce their contracts, they become part-time continuing employees. Employees that we hire under a 1.0 FTE are always on limited status. A little while ago, maybe 2-ish years ago, the board did approve a practice where if a part-time limited employee was in a position for 3 consecutive years, that they could obtain continuing status for that specific position. If that position were to be eliminated, then they would go back to part-time status. That was one thing that we did to help our part-time limited employees. Another thing that they wanted consideration for would be to be considered for employment prior to a position being opened up to the outside. Our current practice, a part-time limited employees is considered with outside candidates. And so we all agreed on the NST team that it would be appropriate and fair for us to offer employment to the part-time continuing employees prior to opening it up to the outside. So you'll see a language change there. A more significant change for us is what we are recommending we change for fall staffing. When we have a surplus, I'll go to the next slide. When it's time to surplus, the board may know that in the fall, when we surplus at a K-6 campus and we reduce a grade level, for example, we reduce a second grade classroom, that it's the least senior person unless a more senior person volunteers themselves in the K-3 section and in the 4-6 section. And what that can cause is a domino effect. So if the grade level reduced to second grade, but the least senior person is in third grade, then that means the third grade team is moving and the second grade team is moving. And sometimes it can cause 3 grade levels to be impacted depending on how the dominoes fall. So this has been a discussion for several years, and the team did finally agree, and it was ratified that we would reduce at the grade level where it is needed. So if it is second grade, it would be the least senior teacher at second grade unless a more senior teacher at second grade volunteered themselves to go. The thing that we added for those employees that is if at the time that we do surplus that employee, the employee indicates that they would like to be considered to return for the next year's staffing cycle, that we would indicate that on the PAR and remember that that was their desire and that they could have consideration to return as part of the reassignment timeline in the spring staffing. That was mostly considered because we do have campuses where employees have been there for a very long time. So the least senior teacher could be a teacher that has been on that campus for 10 years because everyone's been there, for a long while. The employee fringe benefit section was updated really to reflect what we do in current practice. You'll see that this is paralleled between the certified manual and the classified manual. But general leave is a pretty significant change. So I'll let Mr. Ettenborough speak to this one. We both will. A couple of things that I just want to highlight for you, reasons why we looked at this for general leave was that a handful of years ago, with the passage of Prop 206, it changed our practices around leave allocation, and it also dictated new rules around when we could ask for doctor's notes or how an employee could take sick time. And our manuals or not how we allocated leave, but how we monitored leave had to change. And we made some recommendations in our language at that time. But because of some other things as well that Mr. Ettenborough will speak to, he worked with Chris Costanza on forming this language as well as a work team that formalized what we should do moving forward and proposed that to the NST. So I'll let him go over that.
So this is a parallel
between both employee groups, but in the past, a teacher or a classified staff member would receive a bank of sick time, so a 9-month employee might receive 12 days of sick time from which they could take 5 days of personal time. Because of those changes to Proposition 206 and how we manage potential abusive leave, Proposition 206 specifically noted that there were 40 hours of sick leave required that needed to follow the rules for monitoring abusive sick leave, specifically when you could ask for a doctor's note, what counted as sick leave. In addition, as we talked with employees, especially there was occasion that the limit of 5 personal days became difficult because they might have a wedding or something that took a 6th day. And if they are going to be honest about how they're using their time, then they would take the day without pay when otherwise it might have been approved. So by not changing the amount of a leave that an employee receives, but rather reclassifying it, the 5 days of sick leave are awarded up front, so everybody, when they start, has days that they may use. But the general leave in the balance to the same amount as before is accrued throughout the year. It has an additional benefit because we had every year for the past few years previously awarded all of that leave up front, awarded. They didn't earn it, we just gave them access to it up front. Employees had access to it up front. But if an employee used all 12 or 16 days, depending on whether they were 9 or 12 months, before they had accrued those, we had to seek the repayment of that leave. And at times, because the bank was large as it was awarded up front, that was more than the balance of pay. And so on separation, they would owe the district back money. And so to prevent that from happening, we award 5 days up front because the pay period is 10. Employees continuing generally do bank their leave as before. All of the other processes that applied to what we called sick leave, so buyback of leave and accrual of leave, remain. However, they are applied to general leave. So an employee who does not use any of their leave for the course of the year, those 5 sick days become general days that are accessible to them at the beginning of the following year, and they're awarded 5 sick days up front in that following year.
Okay, a couple of other things in the benefit area. We edited long-term disability and changed short-term disability, and that is specifically because we offer short-term disability to our employees. They also can purchase additional short-term disability, and our employees do have the option of purchasing or obtaining long-term disability through ASRS. We also showed under dental care insurance, we added some specific language to point out what full-time status is. So underneath the certified manual, it should read, and we see here that it doesn't, it 0.6 FTE, where for classified staff, it should say 6 hours or more would equal full-time status. And then another change that the certified team recommended is the rate of pay that a teacher should receive for teaching during the summertime. The team agreed that we should use the same rate that we use for teacher class coverage during the contract year, should be again the same rate that we pay during the summertime. So we took one formula that already exists out of the certified manual for classroom coverage, and we placed it here instead for summer rate of pay. It makes it more comparable to what other districts were doing, and what we felt a teacher would be doing during the summer is really the same thing that they're doing during the school year when they're teaching a class. And then this is a committee that no longer exists in practice in our district, and we are thinking back in time and believe that it might be 14 years since this committee actually was in action. So this is recommended to be removed from both manuals. And then updated changes under phased retirement. Some of them are edits, but the meat of this change has to do with to accurately reflect guidelines out of ACA, and that is that employers are to offer benefit eligible employees insurance, and we Our employees who have retired through DVUSD and are eligible for that benefit where we cover them until they are 65, but they receive that benefit through the Arizona State Retirement System. We've left them receiving that benefit over there, and now we offer them either to stay with ASRS or to come back over to us. If they do choose to come back over to us, then they would lose the benefit with ASRS. So an employee who, I don't know, is 55 may not want to choose to come over to us because they would continue to receive that benefit until they are 65. If the employee were maybe 64 or over 65, they may not, they likely would take our benefit because they would no longer be covered under the othered clause. And then Mr. Edinburgh will go over classified changes.
Thank you. This first change in section 11 is just reflecting when a new hire would receive a raise that's been approved by the board. And so after that date that the raise is approved and the contracts for appointments for the following year are processed, employees hired after that in the following year will not receive the raise, but rather the new starting rate. And it's also to distinguish between longevity. This would affect primarily employees hired in the month of April, May, June, right at the end of the school year, and prevent somebody from coming in 1 week and then receiving the raise that somebody else who worked the duration of the year received at equivalent. In section 12, we just clarified that our classified employees who come out for an who report to work for an emergency call outside of their work time will be compensated for at least 2 hours. This has been current practice for quite a while, but wasn't documented in the manual. Most often, this is a plant foreman responding to an alarm call. However, it can also be a facilities employee responding to an emergency. Often they take more than 2 hours anyways, but in the case that it's 2 hours to come and turn off the alarm and check the campus, we assure them 2 hours. And with regards to overtime and compensatory time, we just removed the work week begins on Wednesday and ends on Tuesday. Nobody hopes that it changes, but we publish the work week on the calendar. And in the past, when the work week did change, we missed it in the manual. And so as we talked as a team, we decided to pull it from the manual because we define it in the calendar. And then we won't have to remember to go back if it were to change. In section 19, this is the same as in the certified manual. In the retirement program, we did clarify that part-time employees with no break in service are eligible for the grandfathered benefit with regards to start date. So that means if an employee worked for us for 7 years, they're eligible after 15 years of full-time service. If an employee worked for us for 7 years and went full-time and went part-time for 2 years and then worked full-time for 8 years, they would still be eligible for the Deer Valley retirement benefit. Those 2 years of part-time service do not count as a break-in service, provided they continued to be our employees. That language was there previously, but it did not say regard to start date, so literally it would have read that part-time employees were eligible for the same retirement program, but that was not the intent nor the practice. Classified staff who are employed for 4 hours per day or more are credited with 40 hours of sick leave. So this next part is the sick leave and the general leave. It is the same as we mentioned before in the certified manual. And then in section 19, this also matches the certified manual. What we had previously called long-term disability is actually short-term disability that takes effect after 90 days. Employees can choose and have been able to for the past several years to, at their own expense, pay for a short-term disability at a shorter span and are all eligible for long-term disability through ASRS. And this also matches the certified manual. And it's just clarifying that these benefits are available to classified employees working 6 or more hours, and the language about the insurance committee becoming the benefit work team. This is the same as in the certified manual. The committee is no longer there, and so it was removed. And the phased retirement changes are also the same. The classified manual had at the end, in the appendix, a listing of all district office divisions and departments that we decided was obsolete. It often changes after the manual is approved, and it is published on the portal now, and so we removed it.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Reed, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I do not. Thank you for the report.
Thank you. Mrs. Paperman?
No questions, thank you.
Mrs. Fisher?
With, do we have a cap on our leave accruals?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, no, we do not have a cap on leave accrual with the exception of the deputy superintendent.
So what's the potential liability? Do we know what for our long-term employees?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, the accrued liability for accumulated leave, it is in our CAFR. I don't have the amount, but we would be happy to provide it to the board.
Okay. I'll take a look, because that would be the only thing I would be concerned with. I know that a lot of cities, states, counties, because you do allow to roll over and over. By the time, you have a 20-year employee that rolls their leave year after year, and they retire and end up with $75,000 payout to put into an HSA or something. And sometimes it's beneficial, but if we're carrying that liability, it could be problematic for us as a district, especially as the regulations change and the atmosphere of our finances. So that would be my only concern. Thank you for the report.
Mrs. Ordway?
Ms. Fisher, that's something that we bring up every year, and we get our numbers. So at some point in time, perhaps it's just, it's a conversation. I don't know.
It is a conversation that I
Yeah.
appreciate our educated administrators sharing.
No, that's what I'm saying. Each year we ask that question because I know that it can and has for municipalities, so on and so forth, broken their banks. So at some point in time, Mrs. O'Brien, we could talk about that. Other than that, I think, Trevor, when you gave us your example with your numbers, that you were trying to trick us because you thought it was late, but we understood your little example and your formula. So I appreciate everyone's time, and I see somebody over there wave. Are you the only one left? You are. Thanks for all your time put into that.
I would like to thank you all for the report, but I want to make sure that our committee members know how much we appreciate the time and effort they put in going through this and making sure that we have those changes. And I've so noted that agenda request item for Mrs. Fisher and Mrs. Ordway. All those in favor of approving the agreements for certified and classified, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. We've already passed 6E. We'll move into governing board reports. We'll start with Mrs. Paperman.
I would like to say that I had a fantastic time at the high school graduation. This was my experience, and Deer Valley did an amazing job on the setup and the students, how everything, it went very well. Also, the teachers, I know this is our last week. I hope, and staff, I hope that you have a restful summer and recover and get ready for the new year. Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher?
I'm going to say something everybody in this room is going to think no one would ever say. I really miss Ron Bear at the graduations. We did not count cowboy boots at all. I just forgot to do it. But the graduations were wonderful. One of the things that we used to really enjoy with Mike and Ron was noting what was the best speech of everything, and of course counting the cowboy boots. But I have to say that the best speech really did hit me this year. We had a student, sorry, I'm blind as a bat, Tony Ruan, I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong. He did the senior address from Mountain Ridge High School. And I have to say that that young man is going to be a motivational speaker no matter where he goes. His speech gave me chills. It just listening to him, and he was just amazing. I just can't say any more about how amazing his speech was. They were all great, but his was just that one in a million. I do want to thank everyone who set up the graduations. I know it was difficult. I'm glad that the kids were able to take their masks off for pictures and whatnot, because, I don't know, it's going to really help their pictures and their memories. I want to thank Jenna Moffett for providing information regarding the substitute pay and the open enrollment from elementary to junior high to high school. Do we have, and I want to just ask if we have a basic time frame of when they, when the parents will know, the parents that had reached out to me, they're concerned. Their daughter felt very unstable because she just didn't know if she would be accepted or not. So do we, is it before the end of the school year that they know? Yeah, if they're going like from our elementary or junior high into high school, are they, and so they want to open enroll, say, with the kids they've gone to school with, will they know before the end of the year?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, yes, they will. If an application has been submitted, they're going to know the status of their application very soon. So that whether it be denial, acceptance, or wait list.
Okay, that way I can reach out back to the parents. I do thank you for the information you provided, but then I want to reach out back to them. I also received questions regarding 504 students, and I didn't hear back if those parents still had questions. So I don't know if there's a place on our website. So for parents who maybe their children weren't identified that needed help, but they think their kids need help, who do they reach out to? Would that be Ms. McCusker? I see you shaking yes, so I'll send them your way. I have just two more brief things. In the Friday updates, they're often dismissive towards the parents that comment here, or they know a lot of misinformation. I just want to note that when it comes to what a person believes, it's often based on their own experiences or their perception. Right or wrong, it's how they feel. You cannot say someone, your feeling's wrong. It's what they feel, and it's the perception they have. I just really hope that we can be a little bit more mindful of our parents. I know I'm very defensive when it comes to my kids. You can do whatever you want to me. You can do what, hit my husband or my kids. Yeah, Mama Bear comes out. And that's what our parents are doing. They're not trying to be misinformed. They're not trying to share misinformation. And it's not even misinformation if it's what they've experienced. It's their experience. So I'm just asking that we be mindful not to diminish what they go through and what they're feeling. My final thank you is for the community members who continue to send me the screenshots from the cyberbullying sites and the new commenters. I am going to start a series about cyberbullying, and what is one of the number one things is to document all activity. And whoever it is, and I was going to kind of comment on who it was because it was disturbing to me, but I'm not going to because that just gives her more ammo. But we need to really start looking at what we do because our kids do follow, and we can't address the kids being hateful to each other when we are hateful to each other as well. And sometimes that's just saying, well, you said this, and it's not really what that person said. It's the way you interpreted it. So ask. If something I say to anybody, if you feel it's one way or another, ask me. Ask me for clarification. I will happily give it. We all know that I have no problem being a wallflower and not telling you what I mean. And I welcome you to tell me I'm wrong and to go ahead and convince me why I am. Because I do value all of our district staff, and I mean district, the whole district. If you see something, say something, not just for bullying, for suicide, for other actions, but for what somebody says about, ask the questions. and get real answers. The online gossip, the behind-the-scenes gossip, it has to stop because it hurts our district, all of them, from the kids up. So that's my report for the week.
Mrs. Reed?
Thank you. It was really nice to be in person for graduation. So thank you to Mrs. Myers for all of the hard work that she's put in over the last several months to coordinate with everything between the district and the stadium. And, you know, I know there were a couple of inside jokes that we had about, you know, it's go time when Mrs. Myers puts on her heels. But I appreciate all of her enthusiasm. So thank you so much for that. A big thank you to all of our teachers and administrators that were out there to support the seniors. It was nice to see that show of support from faculty. Congratulations to all of our 2021 graduating seniors, and congratulations to our 2022 incoming seniors, because now you're officially a senior. Also, I just want to say thank you to the staff for putting on great 8th grade promotion celebrations, and for the parents who were able to celebrate their 8th graders with parties afterwards. So that was great to see on social media as well. And I hope that everybody has a great summer and is able to refresh and recharge over the next 2 months so we can start the new school year off on a great note. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Ordway?
Graduations were awesome, but I'm going to go backwards to the 8th grade promotions, and I got to be there at the right time for kindergarten to be promoting too. So at Gavilan Peak this year, they had the 8th graders line the sidewalks, and those almost first graders got to be doing, walk through it. So I think there are so many things from this time of COVID that we have done because we had to, and maybe some of that stuff we'll want to keep because we want to. It was nice. So you go to the graduations, and yes, Karen had everything going. The students who spoke, who sang, who played the drums, who did the guitars, who stood there and held hands with each other through this, their 4 years was not typical, and I'm hoping that it doesn't become typical. They were just awesome, unsung heroes of every graduation, the readers of the names. I hope you're watching because we appreciate the way you read the names. I'm so proud of the resolve this district had to resist what might have been considered the easy way to do things. The consistency of our continuous improvement shows everywhere. It showed at the graduations with the accomplishments our students had, whether they be enlisting in the military, whether it be because they were in ROTC and they're going to start their officer training. The millions and millions of dollars that our students earned that was not given to them for everywhere from culinary arts to biomedical, 4 years, paid for or not, those who are going to continue their jobs that they've already had, to our students that graduated from college a few days or weeks before they graduated from high school. That is the fruit of the labor of this whole district family. So I'm not going to cry like our student advisory council person, facilitator did, but I will afterwards. I am just so proud to be associated and to be a small part of what we do for kids in this district. So thank you very much, and on to you, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. I too would like to give a shout out. Deer Valley Middle School did a great job with their promotion. It was awesome. They had the band was able to play. Their student speaker was very inspiring. I imagine we'll see him in some prominent roles in his high school years. The graduations in person, again, were wonderful. They're all special. I will say that, we had Deer Valley High Schools first, and gave me goosebumps and made me cry. I didn't have tissue on the stage. That's not a good thing. I wasn't wearing waterproof mascara, but it was very special because they were the first one. And so that was wonderful, but not to be outdone by the Boulder Creek High School National Anthem speaker whose music didn't get played, and she sang it without it, and she did an incredible job. So her courage and strength, wow, that was amazing. Only to be followed by Mountain Ridge's high school graduation, where I wasn't sure they were ever going to leave after they were able to move their tassels, and their school fight song was played. It was just really an incredible moment. I'm not sure they were ready to depart, knowing that this was the end of an incredibly challenging and inspiring year for all of them. Mrs. Myers did an incredible job, as usual, making sure things ran smoothly under incredibly different circumstances this year. I was able to attend with all the other board members the Pursuing Victory with Honor. It was a great job to be able to recognize our high school athletes and coaches and schools for what they had accomplished, and I look forward to including back our junior high students into that program next year. I would like to also comment that I was able to participate in a Zoom meeting with U.S. Secretary Cardona and had an opportunity to share with him that I felt it was incredibly important as the federal government continued to look at the pandemic or any other issues, that they remember that local control is incredibly important. We know our community best. That while they might want to issue guidance, that it should be guidance so that we can make the decisions that best suit our community. And finally, again, I want to speak to, I understand when parents might want to report something anonymous or a student. That's important that we acknowledge those reports and follow up on them. However, we do have to have some details. There are times when we receive anonymous complaints that there's not enough to move forward with. I have to have, we as governing board members or as staff members, the superintendent, the cabinet, your principal, whoever you, or the hotline, the anonymous hotline, you must at least start with a school, a grade. We have to have some idea where to start. We have 39 schools, nearly 4,000 employees, and over 32,000 students. We want to advocate on behalf of our students and our families. So please give us a place to start if you feel the need to report anonymously. I feel very strongly my role in Deer Valley started as an advocate for my children and for other children and for parents who said, I'm too afraid to go forward. So please give us a place to start. Thank you for getting the things updated for our summer programming going forward with all the changes related to the mask policy. And I do hope our teachers and staff and students rejuvenate this summer and come back refreshed for a 2021-22 school year. And Dr. Finch.
I also, too, want to thank the graduation teams that put those together, and obviously she's done a nice job there. I wanted to give a shout out again to Nick and Aiden. They didn't really go into much detail from the Student Superintendent Advisory Council, but imagine trying to convince your peers who you cannot see. And so you're using email, cell phone, Zoom to convince them that this is an important project. And for those, I had a team that did a really nice job, but those two stood out above them all. We always counted on them when the chips were down and we had to produce a video by a certain time, and everything was very compressed. So I'm really proud of those two, and Aiden's going to be a big part of next year as well. And as Ms. O mentioned, Miss Bobby did a great job this year. Obviously, I threw her a curveball, and she was ready. And we guided the kids towards something that was productive and will help us in the future as we talk about the importance of social emotional learning and how we need to teach kids to fish, not fish for them. And so as we teach them skills, how to handle their emotions, these videos are very good teachers for that. So again, thanks to Aiden and Nick. And just a reminder that our educational budget is in the tennis court, and your opinion is still important. So feel free to contact your legislators. We do through EFRG and ASA and the governor's office to get our 2 cents in. But that looks like that's coming to the finish line here soon. So please feel free to contact your legislator and tell them to support public education. Thank you.
Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I would make a motion that we adjourn at 9:16.
Second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Gary, put the thumbs down.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.